All right, moving on, we'll get to the presentation. So what we have here today are three of our university TDM professionals who are going to provide us with updates on TDM activities since students returned late this summer. We have, to round out our panel today, a transportation transit planning consultant whose clients include colleges and universities. So I believe first on deck, Barbara Mork. And I don't believe Barbara has slides, but I know she has plenty to share with us. She's the Director of Parking and Transportation Services for the University of New Mexico. Barbara manages, supervises, and facilitates all UNM parking and transportation operations and services. So Barbara, welcome. And we'll just move on to your presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all and share information and hopefully learn some things. Oddly enough, as of September 1st, I am also now my own acting transportation manager. So I've been full into it for this fall semester. I would imagine, like many of you that are involved in colleges and universities, this return to campus in the fall has been nothing short of interesting, in that many of us are coming into a hybrid model of in-person classes, remote classes, including the staffing and faculty that are also involved in those endeavors. So it's made for the planning process that we went through in preparation for the fall semester was above and beyond the norm. It's not just how many permits are we selling and how many cars are going to be on campus and where are they coming from and where are people trying to get to and at what time and all that stuff. It was also trying to figure out how is the remote or hybrid learning aspect and remote working aspect going to potentially impact the services that we're trying to provide, because it has shifted how classes are scheduled, where classes are scheduled, how many people are in classes, not in classes, and things like that. And then in addition to that, because of the pandemic itself, is trying to make sure that, one, my bus drivers are taken care of and are as safe as we can possibly make them. And then two, to make sure that we're not only ensuring the safety of our passengers on our buses, but also that we're in compliance with whatever federal regulations are coming down the pipeline, as well as the state mandates here in New Mexico. So there was a lot of preparation, a lot of communication with different aspects of the university, executive management, marketing and communication, the web people, my internal customers, which are all my staff, as well as our permit holders. And I think that by and large, we have been very successful in our communication efforts. We're still learning how the remote learning or the hybrid learning is impacting our transportation services. Another challenge to that is we had to, because of construction on one of our campuses, we had to add a new parking lot, which changed some of our shuttle routes, and like I would bet you every single one of you that have transportation services, we are at a critical loss of drivers. So it's been, if you like logistics, it has been a logistics heaven. And if you like logistics, but really are used to providing services at this level with these many drivers in these conditions, and now because of pandemic and the loss of drivers and the changes in parking are finding yourself at this level, it has been a logistics nightmare. But we continue to work on it and try to push forward as best as possible. I'm already in the process of working on passenger counts and lot audits, trying to figure out where can we borrow energy from one area to move it into another area, whether it's a change in scheduling on our buses, maybe pulling back some service from a night service and putting it into our daytime. And all the while, are we staying safe? Are we keep our passengers safe? Are we keeping the university safe? Are we in compliance with all the state and the federal requirements regarding the pandemic? It's been a year unlike any other year I've had the pleasure of experience. And that's kind of the long and the short of it. In terms of preparation for the fall, we bought masks, we bought a fogger for the buses, we have disinfecting supplies, we have gloves, we've trained our staff up one end and down the other. We have signs posted all over, including on the buses. We changed from being able to enter and exit on our large buses from any door to front door only. That way the driver can hand a mask to whoever's not wearing a mask and make sure that they're wearing it. Having supervisors at our major bus stops at the start of the fall semester to remind all of our passengers, you need to have a mask on in order to board the bus and ride the bus. And then when you get off, you can do whatever you want with it and things like that. And I think by and large, we've been very successful, and part of it probably has to do with just how the state of New Mexico as a whole has taken on the pandemic, but also the support of the university as a whole in trying to make sure that all of our faculty, staff, students, visitors, patients, the whole gamut that come to the university campus are being as safe and protecting the pack is one of the quotes we use, protecting the pack to the highest degree possible. And I think that's the long and the short of it on my end. Are there specific questions? Are there anything that you're curious about? No? Okay.
So Barbara,
Yeah.
this is Amanda. Could you,
Yeah.
so what has been the experience with the students being on campus full or part-time? Is this starting to settle into a pattern that seems recognizable, or is everybody still juggling kind of as we not sure what we're going to do?
It's definitely established itself into a pattern. The pattern tends to set itself within 2 or 3 weeks of the start of semester. And fortunately, we haven't had like a major increase in the number of COVID stage cases here on campus or in the state. So they've not had to pull back anything for the campus itself. Probably the biggest question in everybody's mind right now is, what is the spring semester going to look like? Now that we're coming into the holidays, which means people are going to be around each other and not necessarily in the campus bubble, as it were. What is that going to do to our COVID numbers here within the state? And then when the spring semester comes back, how is that going to look for the university? Oddly enough, our dorms are pretty full for the fall semester, which is kind of a change from the last 2 or 3, 4 years, because we've had some declining enrollment issues, challenges, whatever you want to call them. I anticipate that they'll probably maintain or maybe beef up some of their testing protocols for the students. We have a vaccination mandate where either you're vaccinated, and it's for faculty, staff, but I believe come spring it will be students, where you have to be vaccinated or you have to have an approved exemption, and then you got to do weekly testing and things like that. And if my memory serves me correctly, that is also going to be mandated for the students come spring. So I don't foresee a lot of change from prior years in terms of the pattern of how many people come in the fall versus how many people there for spring versus how many people are there for spring for the summer semester. But again, it's all kind of contingent on what happens with the permit or with the COVID numbers. And I see a question, uptick in student. What we saw this year, and it's specifically for the students living in campuses, is that we've seen an increase in the number of cars, which is because normally our student to permit for resident permit versus resident hall has been about 42% of the students in residence hall by permit, and it's more like 52%. So it's been a little challenging in regards to those permits. But we've seen for the non-resident students, we've actually seen a decline in the number of permits sold. And I don't know if that means they're finding alternative places to park, if maybe more of them are living on campus, so there's not so many as in the past off campus. I'm not entirely sure what that is. And I'm hoping that we can do a commuter study come spring and kind of get a better sense of that. And also that'll help us for the fall preparation. So on one side, we're seeing more parking permits sold, and on the other side, a little bit less than normal. So we'll see what happens. But that might also be, the fewer numbers might also be the hybrid learning. And they're going for pay station parking as opposed to permit parking. Okay. Any other questions?
So Barbara, we can take some time, hopefully at the end, if questions come to mind over the next hour. Thank you for the presentation. And, you know, it's really nice to see, I think, the first year that we worked through the universities with the pandemic, I didn't really actually see it, but I felt, you know, like everybody else, there were just papers flying everywhere. And that's how I felt. I was running around, and I feel like we're kind of like getting to be more experienced, a little more, you know, I see this level of confidence, and things seem to be fitting into place. And I really enjoy that. Now with our next presenters, I did a little bit of nosing around on their website, and I know that there might be some stuff that they have implemented in recent years for parking permits. Maybe after their presentation, I may ask a question about that. We have Erin and Judy. We have Erin Stam and Judy Manor from NAU in Flagstaff, our favorite place, the place of the gorgeous trees, the cool weather, and skiing. But they have come today to give us a little presentation and update on some of the things they're doing recently. So I'll just let you turn it over to you.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm really curious what you saw on the website that caught your interest, but we can absolutely talk about that. Do I have the ability to share my screen? Yes, I do. Okay. So just so folks know, Judy right now, she is at a conference. She has our website, or sorry, she has our one of our laptops, and unfortunately it has no camera or microphone. She just found out this morning. So she is available in the chat. If folks have questions, she'll watch that. But she'll also be there in case somebody asks a question that I cannot answer. So the unique thing about NAU, we never closed. We did not, you know, even in the height of the pandemic. Now we had significant numbers that we did move to a remote learning option, but we still had students that stayed in the residence halls by choice. We had, you know, many faculty and some staff that worked remotely. But probably just like Barbara's, we've been here the entire time. We did not stop service. We did not close the campus, which honestly, at the time, I think many of us were concerned, not very happy. But in retrospect right now, probably one of the best decisions that our president, she's now our previous president, made, because, you know, it really, I think it made it easier for us to kind of continue to move forward with the flow and the progression of the pandemic. We still had our drivers were still in place. You know, we reduced the total number of drivers. We didn't have as many of our student drivers, but to some degree, it was easier to get people acclimated to, you know, there was no return to campus. We were already here. So I think that made it easier. During the height of the pandemic, our campus shuttles, very much like Barbara, actually, Barbara, we've got a lot of similarities we can talk about, but during the pandemic, we significantly reduced our ridership occupancy. Now, a lot of that, thankfully, was because there's just less people demanding the shuttle, but we also limited it to no more than, we had about 20 to 24 passengers per bus. Like Barbara, we also only allowed loading from or boarding from the rear doors. We did install panels, protective panels around our bus drivers. Obviously, everybody was required to wear masks. In between, our campus is very long, and we do a circular route of the campus. And in between every route, every day, we would spray down the buses and do a wipe down of the buses in between. So those were significant changes that were made during the height of the pandemic. We installed hand sanitizers at all bus stops. We did informational posters at all of the bus shelters about how to more safely ride the bus. And so we did do a lot. We had masks to hand out. Now that we are, university is back open, we are full in person as of this fall semester. So employees are all returned to campus. Student classes are all in person. There is the flexibility. So if a student does get sick or has an exposure, they can continue to do their work remotely. We have a couple of staff members that have exceptions due to health concerns that they are working remotely, but for the most part, everybody's back on campus. Our buses are not as full as they used to be though. So we do believe, and our enrollment is slightly down from last year and maybe about 1,000 from the previous year prior to the pandemic. So not enormous decreases from pre-pandemic levels, but our ridership prior to the pandemic, we did anywhere from 10 to 13,000 riders a day. Right now, I just actually calculated the daily average this week, and we're about 6,900 a day on average. And so better than last year. Last year, we saw less than 6,000 a week, or about 6,000 a week. So much greater than last year, but not as much as pre-pandemic. We are allowing boarding from both front and rear doors. Masks are required in all of our transit on our campus. Obviously the hand sanitizer is still there. And again, we modified our posters at the bus shelters to again encourage people how to safely ride. And one of the options, because Flagstaff is a great walkable campus, is for folks to either walk, bike to their class. And so that has allowed us, we are not packing them in like sardines, but our capacity is much greater than it was last year with limiting it. We're way more than 20 to 24 per bus. During the pandemic, there was a pause on all university travel. Travel is back up and open with the department approval. And so we do see we've got an increase again in our bus charters for special events, as well as in our fleet services. Our department includes parking, shuttle, and our university's fleet, which includes rentals for travel, for employees, for conferences. Actually, Judy probably has one of our rentals right now, traveling to her conference. And so that is back to normal for our charters and our rentals. Masks are recommended, but not necessarily required. And the difference there is that on more of our public transit, our regular shuttle service, it's not necessarily people are traveling, they're not traveling in groups together, they're traveling as individuals. However, on our charters and our rentals, it's a group of folks that know each other and traveling together for a purpose. And so we did make the decision to have it be recommended, but not required. Judy put something in the chat if I have missed anything, but like I said, I do think that it was a benefit that we didn't ever fully close. We didn't realize that then, but it has made reopening easier because we were still open. Actually, very similar to Barbara, our permit sales overall, that we do see a decrease in employee and our commuter student permit demand, but a significant increase in our resident student permit demand. I have not turned anybody away, but we've had to be really creative with some overflow areas. So students are not parking near their residence halls at this point, but parking in the spaces that we have available. We've even had demand from, we have a couple of private-public partnership residence halls on our campus. And so these are areas that they have their own parking facilities, but their facilities are full. And so they have referred their residents to us. And again, we have accommodated every single one. There is even a property on the perimeter of campus, it's not on the campus, that they have reached out to us because they are full. I'm hearing a lot of off-campus housing is, their parking is full, and we've had students reach out to us, and we've accommodated most of the demand that we've had, and we've not turned anybody away. So very similar to Barbara that had that increase in the demand for the resident. And I believe, my opinion is obviously because of the pandemic, people are feeling more comfortable in a private vehicle than they would be if they were traveling home for a weekend on any kind of a Greyhound or Amtrak. Additionally, I did not, normally we get to do presentations at all orientations, and we tell parents, especially those that have students living on campus, not to bring a vehicle. They do not need it on this campus. And I think because we haven't had that opportunity in the last 2 summers, I think that explains the increase. And so we are looking for other ways to encourage our new incoming students this spring, as well as for next fall, to ditch the car, because while I haven't turned anybody away, got really, really tight for a while there. So there's that. And then, yeah, I've already shared most of this, that we've really returned to regular service, but we're minimizing our overcrowding. All of our travel and charters has really resumed using some mitigation. And I talked about the masks requirements. So that's it. We just had a couple of slides there. And again, open for any questions that folks may have.
So Erin,
Yeah.
I was interested in there was a vehicle permit registration program that went online, license plate recognition.
Oh, yeah, so we're probably one of the later adopters of license plate recognition and virtual permits. And the reason that we're one of the later adopters is because Arizona, so everything is based on your license plate. And since Arizona only has single-sided plates, in order to implement that, we would have had to tell people which way to park their car. There are some places across this country in states that only have one plate that have done that. I'm aware of those, but we had discussed here, people already think parking policies are crazy, and I didn't want them to think we were uber crazy. And so what we ended up doing is there's another, so Kennesaw State, they had a similar situation, and they ended up having a parking plate created. And so we followed suit. And so now everything is based off license plate. And if somebody chooses to back into a stall or pull straight through, there's a flat fee. It's a $20 fee to get this parking plate. And it's personal. It says NAU and it's got their own unique numbers. They're kind of cool. But the nice thing about that is nobody ever has to come to our office for anything. Everything is, they order their permit online. Their parking plate is their permits. There's no temporary to print. The minute they place that order in our permit season, it's already immediately effective. It has made monitoring our parking easier. It's made it way easier for our end users. I can't tell you how many times previously that people would lose a parking sticker and have to go through the pain of getting a citation or having to have it replaced. And so all of that has been done away with. So yeah, license plate recognition. There's a cool little video that we did online if you want to look at it.
No, I think it's fantastic. And anytime anyone says easier, I love it. I remember the days having to queue up on campus with cards to be signed. I didn't go to school in Arizona, but there were lines everywhere.
Yeah. For a paper application that then somebody had to then data input. And so those days are long gone.
Long gone and more sustainable too, which I think is
much more sustainable. Yes.
Fantastic. Yes. We, again, like I said, we could have more questions at the end of the presentation.
Absolutely. I'll hang in there.
Fantastic job. And thank you for being here today. So our third and final presentation will come from Brian Waterman. Brian is a senior transportation and transit planner in HDR's Tallahassee office. He has 20 years of experience in conducting transportation studies, developing policy recommendations, and analyzing transit systems, as well as identifying improvements to transportation networks and design. Logistics, Brian, I bet this has been a very busy time for you, and welcome today. I'll turn it over.
Thank you very much. It's kind of funny though, the amazing thing that we're in. I'm guessing I'm from Tallahassee, but actually right now I'm in Grand Island, Nebraska for a meeting. So I'm experiencing some rather unpleasant weather right now with the rain and the wind and cold. So hopefully it clears up before I head back to Tallahassee. So I'm going to share my screen here and I'm going to present the transit agency perspective. So let me get this thing going here. Oops. Okay. Everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Sounds good. Okay. All right. So I do a little more presentation, longer presentation, but a lot of things I say are going to be consistent with what you heard from Aaron and Barbara in terms of the experience from Florida State University. Again, I'm going to present the transit agency perspective. So this is from Star Metro's side, who is the transit provider in Tallahassee, Florida. I used to work for them before becoming a consultant, so a lot of relationship with them. So here's again with Star Metro. When you're doing Tallahassee, Florida, actually there are 3 instances of higher learning. There's Florida State University, Go Seminoles, who basically had transit service since the 1970s provided by the city of Tallahassee, which consists of both an on-campus circulator and an off-campus students can ride for free called the UPass program. The Florida Agricultural Mechanical University, which in 2017 discontinued their services with Florida State, with city of Tallahassee, but they have their own shuttle, and they still can ride the bus system for free or UPass. Tallahassee Community College, which is on the west side of town, community college, they only have a UPass agreement. It was a slight break in the 2000s, or in the teens, and now they're back doing the discounted bus pass program. A couple of highlights of the Florida State service is that for the initial years of the program, it was 100% a campus circulator system where everything stayed on campus, all routes. So basically, you'd have 3 buses, or 3 routes going in one direction, 2 routes going the other direction around the campus. And I'll show you a map here in a second. But in 2007, they broke the system apart and they took more routes off campus to get the nearby apartment complexes and student housing. A lot of student housing the private housing is off campus, and they wanted to make it easier for them to get around. There was an effort in 2014 by Florida State to do another round of redesigns under a new leadership that I was part of, where they wanted to try to make the system more efficient and really have one campus circulator and then routes feed into that. That did not go over very well, and we went back to the design they have right now. Which again, I'll show you a map here next slide. And then they actually made an effort to go all electric here in 2019. If there's any lesson learned here from my presentation, again, from the agency perspective, is how the transit system the campus agreements funded influence what happened in COVID. And what I mean by that is, this is some research I did a couple of years ago when I was at Star Metro, is that there are different approaches to the agreement between the university and the transit agency. Whereas the typical per hour cost, where you're buying 35,000, 40,000 hours of service from the agency, and therefore there's a set cost associated with that. Some pros and cons here. And these are examples of universities that have this agreement. Florida State's one of them. There's the per trip model, again, where you have the system can be where you use your student ID to board the regular routes and ride around. Again, it's very common as well. But there's also the assessed fee approach I've seen in a couple of agencies across the country, where the transportation fee is part of the transit fee is part of the student transportation fee, and that goes directly to the transit agency. And the reason why I bring this up is when we're dealing with the transit agencies in COVID, under a per hour cost or a per trip model, when the service is cut back, that's money the agency's not getting, and that affects their overall budget. So here's the Star Metro system. This is from their transit development plan. The campuses are here. This is Florida State right here. This is FAMU and TCC's over here. It's largely a hub and spoke system with a couple cross down routes. If you look more closely at the FSU campus, which is on the right, that's the middle there. We do have the 5 routes, excuse me, the 6 route circulating campus, and then there's the FAMU has its own. Ridership in Tallahassee has decreased. It's important to know that, but it is on a rebound. I bring that up because Florida State and the campus service represents a good 30 to 40% of total ridership. And so when there was COVID and ridership, went away, it really hurt the state of Tallahassee's numbers, which then correspond into their subsequent formula funds from the state and the feds. So I would be remiss, I didn't talk about COVID in Florida. We are a different state, of course. We know when the pandemic began in March of 2020 and the corresponding stay-at-home order, but Governor DeSantis, good, bad, or indifferent, this is not a political conversation, really started reopening things back in summer 2020. And so a lot of restrictions that you may have had extend longer really went away in the fall, and things began coming back with, again, you can get into the discussion of home rule and the like and mask mandates and that kind of thing. But basically, Florida's approach from a state level has been, let's reopen as soon as possible and get things going. And that really started impacting the return to normal here, because really it began last year. So again, you heard this from Barbara and Aaron, you know, spring 2020, everything shut down. Actually, I'm a PhD student, so I was actually on campus. So I was actually walking, I was taking a stats course and I got the word. And, you know, 1 week we're in there doing our statistics in the lab. Next week, you're doing everything, all your stats at home using the virtual lab. That's a big challenge for me, for many students. And so again, everything shut down. They did keep the one campus circulator open, which just goes around campus to serve those students who remain on campus. We heard, yes, FSU and Tallahassee Star Metro installed the safety panels. And they indicated earlier, though, when you cut back service, the transit agency, they lost money. So when those contracts end, it's a per hour contract, all those hours went away, and that had a corresponding impact on Star Metro's budget. They did do return to service, again, with the governor promoting a more aggressive approach. They did have reduced service, though. So typically, most routes on campus have a 7 to 15-minute frequency. When they did the return to service in 2020 and 2021, they did half frequencies, or doubled them, so closer to 30 minutes. So typically a route which had 4 buses went down to 2 buses. They did maintain the social distancing with half capacity buses and masks were required. This fall, they did return to normal. It is full capacity, no restrictions other than masks. And they do, give up masks to get on and check for that, but there is no limitations. It is 100% full buses. Talking to the FSU person, they've not had any issues in the outbreak of COVID because of the bus service. So going forward, it's interesting as they come back. We're in this challenging time of COVID, but FSU took the time to realize the value of transit and negotiated a brand new program. So FSU has a satellite campus in Panama City, Florida, which is on the beach, on the Gulf Coast. I was part of this conversation as a consultant, and they actually saw the value of transit and the new apartment complex being built, and they negotiated a bus ride-free program for those students. There's a desire to add more amenities on campus. They're actually upgrading the bus stop shelters. A couple ones are pretty old. And then as a transit agency going forward, Star Metro is looking to redesign their bus system again, and you're probably going to see greater integration of the system into the campus service. Because right now, while there is a level of integration, the students still have to, if they are traveling off campus, there's a lot of extra steps to go through. You're probably going to see Star Metro looking to more of an integrated model. And real quick, I have to give some acknowledgments. Again, this is not all my work. I had to reach out to Ronnie Shelley at Star Metro to give me some information. I talked to Richard Grind, who's the FSU Director of Parking and Transportation Services. That pretty quickly. I hope that
So Brian, thank you for the presentation. And I'm thinking here about, we have a lot of differences between some of these universities, not only just size. I mean, it's incredibly large to more mid-sized universities, but also the way that transit seemed to be handled and the student population. So we had shutdowns and non-shutdowns. And I wonder, Brian, if you may have any additional insight, when everybody went remote, what other kinds of impacts did it have on transit service in terms of not just revenue loss, but being able to get started back up again?
They're going through the same challenges that the other agencies are going through with staff retention and the like. The situation where you go from full 100% service to nothing, and then having to bring that back again, and the ripple effect that has. I'm sure there were challenges that both FSU and Star Metro and even the other universities had in getting the staffing back and getting them back up. And there's this lag time that existed that caused negative impacts to the students who needed the service.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling and very fascinating to hear all the work that's been happening. This is open for other questions. If anybody would like to ask any of our speakers today about their experiences, and Scott's waving his hand.
Well, I put my other hand up there, but I don't know if you can see that or not.
No, just the one, Scott.
Does that mean I only get one question? Anyway,
Just get
my
one
question is,
hand.
is just
Okay.
not maybe for our speakers, but for, I see there's a bunch of guys or people from other colleges here. And, you know, anytime I read anything in the transit world, there's so many driver shortages. I mean, practically every agency has a driver shortage, but you guys are kind of in a unique position, being universities, where I was just wondering if you guys have set up a program to train some of the students for part-time driving jobs. I mean, it would benefit, you know, the universities, but then maybe in the long term, it might add more drivers to the pool and benefit, you know, other transit agencies. So I just throw that out there, just curious to see if you guys are doing anything like that.
This is Erin. I can share. We've had our own student driver training program for, oh, Judy would have to tell me how many years, but more than 10 years. We've made improvements over the years to try to really do an intense program over the summer. We do hire students. I mean, I will tell you, in a normal year, we would have 40 to 60 student drivers. This year, we've got less than 20. Now, part of that is also because the city of Flagstaff, where we live, they have increased their minimum wage significantly more, and we've had a very hard time. We're not able currently to keep up with that. There are benefits to working on campus, and so we feel that to some degree. Oh, Judy says we've got 25 students, so yay, we've got an increase. But that's still significantly lower than we normally see. Like I said, really, we would normally have at least 40 student drivers, and they are fantastic. It is a huge benefit to them. First of all, because we fully train and test them, they get their CDL. There's a value in that they can take with them post-graduation. And we've actually seen many students that end up being long-haul truck drivers, or, I mean, they really can take that and go many places. But beyond that, it does provide them a very flexible job. We've got students that will drive for an hour and go to class and come back and drive for 2 more hours. And that's the benefit. We're also obviously very flexible around their class schedule, around their test schedules. We understand they're not here during the breaks. And so we've had one for years, and it has been a fantastic addition for our department as well as for our students. So yeah. But there's shortages in that population too.
There's a question I see about subsidizing bus passes. For the public transit, we actually have an agreement with ABQ Ride for that we're able to issue little stickers that go on their IDs for faculty, staff, and students that allow them to ride for free. But then come January 1st, the city is going to go to no fare for a full year, and we'll see what happens there. But otherwise, we don't have to subsidize bus passes because we provide the service. But yeah, Erin, I'm going to be in contact with you regarding your student driver program, because that's something that I've wanted to happen here for years, and we're at a point now where we need to do something. And I would imagine that those of us that are scrambling for new drivers, one of the things we're seeing here in Albuquerque is that other transportation services are raising their minimum wage, their starting rates so quickly and so often that even though I was in the process, don't say that out loud, of negotiating a pay increase for the drivers, I'm now going to have to pretty much double it. So it's like, holy crap. Anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. And Judy would be, I'm the director, she's the assistant director, but honestly, Judy does all the heavy lifting when it comes to our campus shuttle. And she's fantastic. And I'm sorry she can't show her face or share her voice, but she's amazing. But you can reach out to either one of us and we can, what we're adding this year, we're super excited. We have a very good partnership with our local bus transit provider. And we just got a grant to actually build our own CDL course, because right now we've been using parking lots for the last decade, and it's tearing up the parking lots. With campus being busier for parking, we can't get in there to do our training and testing. And so we were able to get a grant to build our own CDL course. We are now looking to partner with our community college that just started their own CDL training program because they're looking for a space. And so there's a lot of benefits. You might even want to reach out and see if your local community college has a CDL course that they might do the educational piece. And then, you guys maybe have the benefit of getting those students through the program.
Yeah, there are some community partners we can work with. We're just in the process of hammering out details.
Yeah, perfect. Reach out to us. So with regards to the percentage that subsidizes the cost for bus passes, so NAU, there is one route that we have with the city that the university does provide a fee for that one route over the course of the year, that students have full access at no additional fare. That's our Route 10. And that's because that was another joint program where that route actually was built running directly through the middle of the campus. It was a great benefit to the city bus provider because they're able to get around the city a little bit more quickly by cutting through the campus, and fantastic for the university because what it really was able to do is connect some of our off student housing locations to the campus with transit. So that was a great thing. So the university covers that cost. We have an employee bus pass program that is actually paid by our parking side of the house, pays for that because by incentivizing people to take the bus, it alleviates the demand on the parking, which then allows us to accommodate other users. So there's that. We do not currently have a universal student bus pass. The cost for that would most likely be more than what we would be able to fund right now, but it is a goal in our, we have a climate action plan that is currently in draft that we're hoping to finalize, and that is one of the possible solutions in there is looking at a universal bus pass. We just, like anything else, you have to find the funding for it.
Yeah, and the Star Metro again does the Universal Bus Pass program for all students. Actually, all students. That includes K-12 gets ride for free, and FSU, FAMU, and PCC students have some sort of either discounted bus pass or they ride for free with their student ID. They did not go fare free during COVID. They just gave fare free rides to COVID appointments, such as vaccinations or checkups. There are other fare free programs that take advantage of, such as veterans ride free and homeless ride free on our buses. But they're part of the homeless program.
Yeah, and I should have shared, our city bus provider did do fare free for well over a year. They even, the employee bus pass that we get, they even waived that fee because they were the recipient of some CARES funding. So they really made transit accessible throughout the city and the university during the past year, which has been amazing.
Now, if anybody else is out there waving their hand like Scott did, I cannot see you. But we did have a comment about current drivers are being incentivized financially with a referral program to try to get other drivers on board. Thought I would read that. And
Can David share what the incentive is? I mean, obviously financial, but how big is the carrot?
It's like $1,000 or less, but there's also a situational aspect to it where the driver who comes on board has to stay on board for a certain period of time as a minimum. So,
Nice.
yeah.
I'm seeing the $500 referral and $1,000 hiring for drivers from CU Boulder. Well, I know we are coming close to the end of our time today. I don't, this is still an opportunity if anyone has any connections you want to make or something you would want to add to the conversation. But before we close out, I just wanted to extend a special thank you to Aaron, Barbara, Brian, and the Judy Manor that we wish could have joined us, but we can see her here. So we know she's here in spirit. You all have done a fine job, and I appreciate the work you did in helping us today with this presentation.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sometimes Elizabeth will close us off, but no pressure. I don't want to put you on the spot. You do it so
Um,
well.
Oh, now I have to remember what I usually do. I was just going to say that we will have the recording available on the chapter's webpage as soon as we can get that up. So if you want to refer back to it or share it with somebody, we'll have that out there. I would say, what's today, Wednesday, at least till the end of the week before we can get that done. So, but thank you again to our presenters and to the Valley of the Sun chapter leaders for putting this together. And we'll give you 4 minutes back and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks,
Alexa.
everybody.